trying a different setup today. We're gonna make beef stew. Hello, welcome to my kitchen. I'm using a new camera, so I can't put it over here. I'm putting it over there, so you can kind of see a different part of the kitchen. It looks different. Beef stew is really easy to make. All you need is beef, obviously. Beef, which I'm currently, that's okay, sorry about the noise. Beef. Alright, so this is chuck roast, or just chuck, I guess, beef chuck. Hey, Ghost, you can't do that. He's right there. You can probably see his tail over here. He's right there staring at me because he wants the beef. This is chuck. It's a tough cut, but for long cooks, it's perfect because of all the connective tissue and collagen and everything. Like, all the fat is gonna be delicious when it's stewed down. It's gonna get succulent and tender. I'm gonna keep all the fat. I'm gonna sear it whole like this, and afterwards we'll cut it into chunks. If you want even more browned flavors, you could cut it into cubes right now and sear each cube individually on all of their 6 sides. But it takes too long and I'm lazy, so we're gonna sear it and we're gonna cut it after the fact. But first we're gonna prep our aromatics. You'll see it's really simple. I have a leek, some carrots, herbs from my freezer, because every time I buy herbs it's too much, so I keep them in my freezer, and then you can use them for soups and stews. In summer I grow my own herbs, but in winter I can't, so that's why. Garlic and onion, yellow onion, white onion, red onion, any onion you want. I'm only gonna use half this onion. The other half is gonna go in the stew as like a eating component, not as a flavoring component. So it's gonna be really rustic. You'll see, pretty crazy actually. So all we're gonna do, well, once Kosa decides to get out of the way, all we're gonna do, like if they're dirty, clean them. Obviously, I don't even know if this is dirt. This looks like dirt, so I'll remove it. But you don't even really need to remove the tops if they're not dirty. So I'm gonna go clean these. But before cleaning, another thing you need to clean is your leek. So this leek doesn't have much of the white. So this part tends to be dirty. So what you do is you open it up and you check the layers. And you see how like there's a little bit of dirt in each layer because they grow in sand. And since they grow in sand, it means that the sand builds up because of the way it's shaped. So I'm gonna go clean this. But the part that has even more dirt buildup is, well, the leaves, actually. So these leaves should be decently clean because they're the ones that are open, they're the ones that stick out, so this is gonna be fine. But like this part over here, when you open it up, it's usually like filthy. Yeah, look at all that gross, like, sand. It's actually a pretty clean leek, all things considered, but like, look. See all that sand? So you're gonna clean it. I'm not gonna use the whole leek because this leek is gigantic, but I will use part of the leek. So I'm gonna go clean my carrots, I'm gonna go clean my leeks, and I'll be back. Actually, you can even come with me because of my new setup. So see, this is my sink, and all I'm doing is like, I'm cleaning. I'm just cleaning it. We don't need much. It's usually like these parts over here that you want to really like care about. My arms are probably blocking the camera, honestly. We're gonna go back to our cutting board. Kind of like a creepy angle going on, but I kind of like it. So You could keep these pieces, you know, this big if you want, or you can kind of roughly chop them. If you roughly chop them, they'll leach their flavor more. Like the smaller you cut it, the more they'll leach their flavor. This is all stuff I'm going to discard, so I'm not too fussy about how I cut it. But I do want the flavors to extract a good amount, because this is gonna cook like 3 to 4 hours. So it's not like a soup where you can kind of let it go forever. So we're just gonna chop it to help the flavors. Doing a good mix of green and white, because we get 2 different flavors from this. And we're not gonna put much onion because we already have so much of the leek. And I'm gonna put the onion with the skin because we're gonna strain it, so it doesn't matter. I'm only gonna take, actually, you know, I'll take the 2 tips of the onion. This onion is not the nicest looking, but it's okay. We'll basically take the outer layers of the onion. The inner layers we'll keep for our actual stew itself. And we're gonna cut this garlic in half, put everything in. And our carrots, I forgot to clean them, so I'll go clean them. This one's small, so I'll cut in half. This one's cut in half, this one cut in half. Alright, so Kos is messing with cardboard. He was putting his head inside cardboard. So we have all our aromatics over here. We have our herbs here that I kind of pick and choose. Next step, we're gonna make our stewing liquid. We're gonna make it in advance because it's good to prep everything in advance and then do it when you know you need to. Little pot. Hey, that's me. Cut our stock that we're gonna put in. Miso that we're gonna put in. It's me again. Tomato paste. Soy sauce. You could put fish sauce or Worcestershire sauce. In this case, Worcestershire sauce. Alright. So stock. It's still kind of room temp, so it's still liquid, but there's a lot of gelatin in there, so it'll make a very succulent stock. Just clean up the whole mess. Then we're basically adding a bunch of umami boosters, if you will. So we're gonna add tomato paste. So it's cool how you kind of use the spike. Use the spike on this end to open this thing. So you go, pop, and then you go. A good squeeze in there, a good squeeze. I don't know how much a squeeze is, but that's what we're gonna put. Put a few glugs of Worcestershire sauce. We're gonna put a good drizzle of soy sauce, and then we're gonna add miso. But my miso is very dry. Still delicious though, just very dry, so. Oh my god. Shit. Yeah, this is like really old, but it's still okay. Just old. Think this it might be too much. I think this much, and we'll see. But like, there's gonna be so much depth of flavor anyway with what we're doing. the amount is kind of, the amount is very arbitrary. So to help dissolve the miso in here, I'll warm it up and then I'll whisk it. So I'll put it on my stove. Oh yeah, and as part of the herbs, we'll also add bay leaves. So that's like 2 broken pieces and 1 small one. That's gonna do like more or less 2 bay leaves. I'm gonna put a handful of black peppercorns. So I think that's how we're gonna go about it for now. So I'm gonna sear my meat. So I have bacon fat here because, well, I collect the bacon fat that I use, but most also, you know, when you make bœuf bourguignon, which is a very classic, you know, French meat stew, you use bacon or lardon or salt pork, and I don't want to put bacon in this. I think it's not necessary and it's pretty strong, but you know, the smokiness that bacon fat brings is kind of nice, but it won't be as strong as like having chunks of as heavy as having chunks of bacon in your meat. So as a result, we'll you know, we'll put bacon fat as our fat to sear the meat. But something else I just thought about that I have, it's gonna make for a nice umami booster, is this little packet over here of mixed dry mushrooms. And the dry mushrooms are a big you know, umami booster. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in, doesn't matter where we put it, so I'm gonna put it in my flavorful stock mixture. It's gonna warm through as the stock mixture warms up, and I'll be able to add it later. I'm gonna put my apron because there's gonna be there's definitely gonna be splattering, and I don't want to stain my beautiful pajamas. All right, so let's sear our meat. You want good contact with the pan, and so, you know, you can press it down with your hand or utensils if you want. So, you know, just the big piece of meat getting seared. You can, you shouldn't be afraid really of overcooking at this stage, because it's a really big piece of meat and it's basically going to cook slowly in flavorful liquid. So really get like a nice deep dark crust on there, and don't worry too much about overcooking it. I don't salt at this stage because a lot of the elements in my flavorful stock are gonna be salty. You know, soy sauce, miso, Worcestershire sauce is salty, and the bacon fat is salty as well. So we're not gonna add any salt, and we'll add salt later when we adjust what we're doing. Also, my stock is unseasoned. So see, like, this is like an okay sear, but you want to go deeper, harder. But we're gonna flip it, and we'll just get a better sear when we do the second flip around. Because by doing this, we're letting the surface dry out a little bit. So when we turn it, it'll get even more crisp and then nicely seared. We're filming from higher up now. I realized it was probably a better call. So yeah, now you can see it's got a nice deep crust on the outside. What I'm gonna do just slightly is, like, since there's bacon fat and beef fat in my pan, I'm just gonna put my veggies in it. Anyway, because the veggies have to rest at the bottom, I'll just kind of toss them around in the hot fat, just to kind of bring out a little bit of flavor. But I'm not gonna cook the vegetables much, really. Alright, so as they are kind of hanging out in there, I'm just gonna cut the meat, so you can see a lot of like natural separation lines in the meat, or at least you can kind of see it like that. So it's good to cut across those lines that naturally occur. And you have to keep in mind, you know, when you do meat like this, it'll reduce in size by about half. So keep in mind the size of the pieces you want to eat when you're cutting it. For example, this, I don't know how to describe this size. This is like good for me. You know, you can have smaller and bigger pieces. They don't have to be all the same size. Just keep in mind that if there's a very large difference between the size of the pieces, then we won't cook at the same rate. See, this is a big chunk of fat. I don't mind it. I love fat. And also I need to gain weight. I'm super skinny and it's bad for me. I'm actually at risk, but you know, whatever. I'm gonna add it to my food. In there. Okay, I'm just letting them like kind of sweat out a little bit. No! Now I'm adding my meat and all the juices. Gonna let them get settled together. And now I'm at like low-ish heat, because the next step is I have my delicious flavorful liquid over here, and trying to dissolve the miso, because it's a big chunk, it's a big hard chunk. So I'm basically gonna whisk the miso in. If you have red wine, you know, you could put red wine in this case, you know, it'd make it more similar to Beef Bourguignon, but that's not a bad thing necessarily. And you know, if you don't have any miso, soy sauce, Worcestershire, things like that, just put things that are full of you know, umami and glutamates, like cured meats. That's why they, like, you know, they use bacon for or lardons for Beef Bourguignon. You know, you could put tomato, anything like tomato paste, but you could even just put tomatoes and let them cook down in there and then strain them out after. You know, you could put anchovies, you could put you know, Maggi sauce, fish sauce, soy sauce. Anything that's like full of glutamates is good for, you know, umami flavor. You could even just put straight MSG in there if you want. But I'm putting all these things like that contain a good amount of MSG naturally. And another thing that's very nice to do if you don't have homemade stock is, if you do have unflavored gelatin, you can add unflavored gelatin to store-bought stock or just the water, and it's gonna kind of lead to a succulent mouthfeel. But in this case, you know, because this is homemade stock that I simmered over a long period of time, it's gonna have a good amount of gelatin inside naturally. But you can always add more if you want more of that kind of succulent mouthfeel. Also put a dark beer, like a stout could probably be very nice in something like this, but it's not my, I don't have any beer on me. I tend to have only wine to cook with, because I don't really drink alcohol. Miso has dissolved, so I'm gonna add all of this, and you want it to cover up. You can still see a little bit of the miso. I guess I didn't do it properly, but it's gonna be okay. Basically, you want it to cover the meat by half, and in this case, you know, I have a piece of carrot stuck in there. You want it to cover the meat by half, and in this case, our meat is covered by a bit around half. Like, you know, it's not fully submerged where you can't see the meat anymore, So that's gonna be fine. So we're gonna bring this to a simmer and we're gonna put it in the oven. My oven's at 275 and I'm gonna let it cook over 3 hours and I'll check after 3 hours. The food science behind it, I don't remember the exact words, so I don't want to misinform. But pretty much like if you add a lower heat for a longer period, it's going to lead to more succulent results. So now that it's boiling, I'm going to put it in my oven. So as you can see, I got my oven. I'm going to start it off with like a half lid like this. And I'm going to remove the lid later to help promote evaporation and browning to lead to a more developed, browned flavor and a concentrated flavor. The reason I do it in the oven instead of on the stove top The reason I do it in the oven instead of on the stovetop is because I like to... Hold up, I'm gonna just show myself talk instead. It's gonna be a bit more interesting. So my hair got done. Oh yeah, look at that, beautiful. Yo, look at that. Nice apron I got for Christmas. So the reason I put it in the oven instead of letting it simmer on the stove is because I enjoy, in a stew like this, I enjoy kind of the deep, dark, kind of caramelized proteins and sugar flavors, the Maillard stuff. So what's nice about putting in the oven is you get even heat all around, so it's just kind of more consistent heating through, which is a different process than simmering from the bottom. So as a result, what ends up happening is that the surface, because of the convection air that's gonna, even if it's not a convection oven, it's still like a convection heating apparatus because it's everywhere around it. And the surface proteins and meat and vegetables and everything will brown and develop a lot of flavor that you can then mix back into the stock and into the stew periodically. So it's very nice. Also, another reason, leaving stuff on the stovetop, sometimes my cats get curious and they come check it out, and I don't like that. So by putting it in the oven, it's also safer because cats can't open the oven. Also, while talking, I noticed over there I have my little bag of herbs, and I forgot to put the herbs in it. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. That already smells quite good. So in here I have thyme, rosemary, sage, and parsley. So that's what I'm gonna put. Basically, I'm gonna put and it's all frozen. I'm gonna put a handful of everything. Basically, I'm doing what the French would call a bouquet garni, except I'm not gonna tie it up because I don't care, because I'm gonna strain everything. So I have my herbs. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna nestle them in the liquid so that they diffuse their flavor in there. Oh shit, that's a close-up. Must not be very flattering. So right now we're at this step where I'm gonna cook off some vegetables that I actually want in my stew, and I'm gonna cook them up just a little bit to develop a bit of flavor. Then I'm gonna strain my stock, keep the beef, keep the mushrooms, and add the stock and the beef to this rutabaga is pretty stiff. Add the stock and the beef to and the mushrooms to the vegetables that I just cooked, and we're gonna stew it for 1 more hour. It's been about 2 hours since I put it in the oven. I'm gonna keep this for stock, it's delicious. So, I'm gonna put rutabaga, I'm gonna put onions and leeks that I kept from my when I made this the stew, and some mushrooms. So yeah, I'm just going to peel this, cut into chunks, and put a rutabaga in. So I'm putting a rutabaga because I like it more than, you know, like carrots or like it more than carrots. I'm also gonna put potatoes. Very easily, especially if you're peeling something very stiff like this rutabaga. And keep all of this for stock. Yeah, you can see me. Why is it so stiff? You know, this knife is not that sharp, but it is sharp. So I'm kind of impressed by this rutabaga. Turnips and radishes, there's always the risk that they'll be super stiff like this, but this is crazy. Oh my god. Well, this is very not glamorous, you know. Oh, the great cook, but he doesn't know how to cut a rutabaga. I guess it's true. I suck at I'm terrible at cooking, that's my secret. Yeah. See, this is what I mean. You can see like the deep, dark, rich caramelization at the top that I was talking about. That's why I keep it uncovered. And we'll start with our mushrooms. Mushrooms are the thing we're gonna cook most or second most. Rutabaga might be cooked more just because so mushrooms, you know, you want to have plenty of oil for them to soak in, but also it's good to start with no salt to get them like a good caramelization at first, then salt them so they draw moisture and then they further cook down. It's good to do stuff in tandem, you know. Just add a bit more fat to the pan. So what we're gonna do now is we're basically gonna take our beef and mushrooms and put in a separate container that we're gonna kind of reassemble everything afterwards. Alright, so what happened was nothing crazy. All I did was I cooked my vegetables, as you can clearly see. I added them to my cooking liquid, my braising liquid that I strained. On the side, I kept all my mushrooms and my beef. And by the mushrooms, I mean the dehydrated mushrooms that were cooking for a long time. The only thing that's missing are potatoes, but I kind of feel like I have a lot of stuff in there. So maybe I won't add potatoes, but I do like potatoes quite a bit, so I think I'll add a few. I'm gonna cook too many since I have Rutabaga, just like this guy. This guy. Do you see me cut properly? Yes. This guy. The eye. Move the other eye. That piece wasn't looking so good, but everything else is fine. I think that's how much I'll add. You can kind of try to clean the, you know, the rim where everything kind of caramelized around them. But I like to do that at the end. It's just harder a little bit at the end, so you could do it now. You know, you use the liquid to your advantage to help dislodge the gunk. It'll add flavor. Same thing with the bottom, but the bottom was pretty clean. So, but you know, always. You know, when you deglaze or things like that, like try to scrape the bottom. Something I should have done in step one, like after doing my beef and kind of when I cooked the veggies a little bit before adding the liquid, I should have kind of added only a little bit of liquid, scraped the bottom to get all the flavor, and then, but I can do it now, like it doesn't matter when you do it. It just matters that you do it, because it's free flavor, and if you don't do it, you'll have to clean it out of your pan, and it's just gonna take longer. So I don't see why you. Now I'm just adding my beef and the mushrooms. I'm just gonna rinse this very slightly to have the accumulated flavor. Gonna redistribute. This is where I would adjust for salt, but not to do your like final salting. It's more so just like I'm gonna taste it right now. And if I find that it's like severely undersalted, I'll be able to add salt so that as the things cook, they get cooked in a flavorful and well-seasoned-ish liquid so that they can be well-seasoned themselves. But if you season it to your desired saltiness level right now, it'll continue to reduce and it'll end up too salty. So this is just to see if we're progressing nicely. Like right now, I think it's like slightly under seasoned. Because, you know, I didn't salt this at all. I only added my umami ingredients, and I added bacon fat, which is salty. But the umami ingredients, some of them are salty, some of them are not salty. And also keep in mind that you know, like umami slash savouriness is not salt. It's separate from salt. So something could be, you could have added a lot of MSG but not enough salt. You know, to something. In this case, you know, we didn't add MSG, we added it in other ways. But I'm still gonna taste it to make sure. I think this is a good amount of salt for it to be right now, because that way it's going to reduce more, and that's what we want. So I'm going to put it in the oven and we're going to let it go for about 1 more hour, and then we'll see if it's too liquidy. We can always reduce it to make it more thick, or we can add a cornstarch slurry if you know that your broth won't have much gelatin in it to begin with. I'll see you in 1 hour. At this point, the stew is ready, so I took it out of the oven. You know, the meat's tender, the potatoes are tender, the rutabaga is tender, everything's where it should be. I just want the liquid to be more reduced, so right now I'm just, you know, I'm just boiling it to help reduce the liquid till it's a bit thicker and a bit more flavorful. You know, if you don't want to reduce the liquid because you think the quantity is fine, or you think, you know, it's too salty, so if you were to reduce it more it would get too salty, you can add, like, you know, cornstarch slurry or things like that. But for me, you know, because of all the onions and the leeks and the rutabagas, you know, it kind of, when it went in the oven, it was pretty salty, like where a bit less than what I would want it to be, but it was pretty salty. But now, you know, because of all the sugar that leached and kind of developed, it's actually much less salty than when I put it in the oven an hour ago. So I'm going to reduce it and I'll adjust salt and pepper later. You can tell how thick a liquid is based on the size of the bubbles and how long they stay at the surface. That's one way to tell. You can also just, you know, use your spoon and check the viscosity. And, you know, if you wanted to be more professional about it, you could strain the liquid, keep all the filling, reduce the liquid on its own, and then re-add the filling. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna be fussy about something like that. You just want to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom, but like it shouldn't. There's not enough, like, you know, everything's gonna be at the surface more or less. It's warm. I got a little bubble like popped on me. So I'm just waiting until it's my desired thickness, really. There's nothing else really interesting going on. The only thing I could say is, like, I guess as a pro tip, well, not pro tip, but like it's something that people do. It's when you sear your meat, you sear it and then you coat it with flour. And then when you add your vegetables and your liquid and everything, the meat that's coated in flour will the flour is going to help thicken the liquid. What you could also do is cover your meat with flour, like your cubes of meat with flour, sear them with the flour on, so the flour kind of cooks and the meat kind of cooks. Problem is, you know, flour burns pretty easily, so you got to be careful with that. You could also do a roux, you know, like mix flour and butter, or flour and oil, and your roux would act as a thickener. You could do bar manier, which is basically an uncooked roux, and add it to this to thicken it. But I'm going the old-fashioned way of just reducing it, because I know my stock has a good amount of gelatin in it, so I know that eventually it'll get to my desired thickness. At this point, you know, it's kind of soupy, I guess you could say. It's very liquidy. Not like as liquidy as soup, but it's like soup-like. What you could do, you know, what you could have done earlier is add rice or barley or like some sort of grain, and you would have like a, you know, beef and barley soup or beef and barley stew. You know, it would have been delicious. But in this case, since I don't have you know, noodles or rice or barley, and I don't want to eat it kind of like as a soup-like thing, I'm going to let it reduce. That's about it, really. Nothing interesting, just reduction. It's not very exciting, but it's reduced to the degree that I would want it to be reduced. as you can see, it's got kind of thick bubbles. It's thicker than earlier, but it's, you know, it's not like syrupy thick. I find that it gets a bit too heavy when it's syrupy thick, so I prefer a bit more liquidy like this. The stew is ready, and like I always say in my stew videos, stew is always better the next day if you allow everything to cool down in the liquid. So I'm not gonna eat any today, and I'll leave you with this beautiful sight of the stew itself just bubbling away right before I put it away.